It almost seems like just about everyone has the ultimate goal of being an entrepreneur one day, but most people don't even make it to day one. And for the people who do, day one can be the make it or break it moment. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips for starting a business from zero. The same advice that helped me build a 6-figure business in under 12 months. Just like most things, how you start is how you'll finish. If you start wrong, your first day as an entrepreneur can end up being your last day. And if you make it to day 2, the odds are still against you. And the thing is, if you've never launched a business before, then most of what you know about launching a business are probably the exact same things that will hold you back. But today, we're going to correct all those misconceptions and put you on the right track towards entrepreneurial success. And we're going to get started right now. Through my business, ThinkLions, I've worked with more than 500 startups over the last decade or so. And there's one excuse that I hear almost daily for why someone hasn't launched their business yet. And that excuse is a lack of capital. But my first tip for starting a business from zero is don't obsess over funding. If you think that everyone who started a business had tens of thousands of dollars sitting in the bank, well, that's definitely not the case. Facebook didn't cost anything to start. Mark Zuckerberg coded it and built it right in his dorm room. There were already tens of thousands of people using the platform before the company ever took any funding. And I'm sure that you've heard of Airbnb. Well, that had to take millions of dollars to start, right? Believe it or not, the whole company started with just a landing page and a single property, and that property was the founder's apartment. It's easy but dangerous to compare yourself on day one to these massive companies who are on like day 470,000, because likely their products didn't start as what you know them as today, and they likely started in the same position as you, wondering how they were going to bootstrap themselves forward. Now don't get me wrong, because there are some businesses that do take significant capital to start up. Like if you're launching a nursing home or something, there's a bunch of equipment that you're going to need. You need staff, you need the facility, licenses, and several other elements that are really necessary from day one for your business to even operate. But if you're building software, for instance, you don't have to build out every single feature that comes to your mind. You don't have to hire a huge staff or even start in an office. All you need is enough to build a minimum viable product with just enough core features to get started. This could be even as simple as just launching a landing page, just like Airbnb did. And if you're launching a physical product, you don't have to manufacture 1,000 units before you even have customers. You simply need to fund a few prototypes and then start getting feedback and pre-orders from real customers. And you'll really put yourself on the road to success when you can figure out how to sell your product before you ever even build it. Unfortunately, you can't just swap out capital for creativity. You're an entrepreneur now. It's your job to solve problems. I mean, that's really what we do. And the truth is, getting bank or investor capital too early can actually backfire and push you down the wrong path even quicker. Startup companies get these huge investments and then they start building instead of building, testing, and learning. Funding is expensive too. Bank loans have interest and puts an immediate liability on your company. Investors require equity, so you'll devalue every dollar of revenue as soon as you strike an investor deal. Instead of trying to land an investment at the beginning, learn how to start small and learn how to leverage your product to actually earn revenue. The longer that you can go without securing capital, assuming that you're actually generating traction, the less expensive your funding will be in the long run. Because ultimately, your business credit will keep getting better over time, so your interest rates with bank loans will eventually decrease. And over time, the value of your business will expand, making it easier to get investor funding and for less equity. My advice to you is to be patient with funding, because it sounds like a major win to secure it, but the real win is when you can bootstrap your business until you start generating revenue and then use that revenue to get to the next step. So I talked about the need to test and learn as you build your product, and that leads me to my second tip. And that tip is to assume that you don't know anything about your customer. When you're starting a business, you have to really take the time to learn and understand everything that there is to know about your customer, because ultimately the market dictates what the market wants. You can change your product and you can change the market that you serve, but you can't change their experiences, their backgrounds, or their expectations. Way too often, entrepreneurs think that they know everything that there is to know about their customers, since maybe they work in a related industry or they're a consumer within that market themselves. But listen to me when I tell you that until you've put a product into the market, you actually don't know anything about your customers. And if you look into the statistics, it'll tell you everything that you need to know. Because of all the businesses that start each year, 20% of them fail within the first year. And of those businesses that fail, 35% of them fail because there's no market need. In other words, 35 of every 100 business failures is because they built something that customers didn't actually want. Now, I would go on to say that none of these entrepreneurs went into business thinking that nobody will want to buy their product. Instead, they made an unvalidated assumption and then built their product before they ever took the time to ask and understand what their customers actually want. If you haven't interviewed, surveyed, and engaged with customers within your actual market, then you really don't know anything about them. And that's probably gonna come back to bite you in the end. Building a business is super risky, so you need to test everything even before you start designing your product. You have to test your product concept, your marketing message, your marketing strategies, the business model, and the actual product or software that you're creating. It's expensive to build a new product and to bring it to market. And the more features that you have, the more it's gonna cost to build. So before you start building it, you wanna have the data that actually proves and validates that you're actually building the right thing. So let's look at an example. Say that we wanna create a pair of baseball cleats for baseball players, but instead of regular shoestrings, we think that straps would be better. I mean, because nobody wants to be running to home base and then their cleat comes untied and trips them up, right? So we might decide to go ahead and take the huge risk and manufacture 1,000 pairs and then try to sell them. But then we find out that baseball players actually think that the straps are pretty uncomfortable. Our assumption was wrong, and now we have hundreds of shoes sitting in our inventory that we can't sell. Just like that, your business is over, it's done, and you lost. But that's actually not how you do it. Instead, you create one prototype pair and then have 10 baseball players wear them and run a few drills in them. Then we interview them to see what they thought about the product. And during these interviews, we learned the same thing, that they thought the straps were uncomfortable. So knowing that, we figure out how to make the straps more comfortable, and then we create a second version prototype. And then we do the exact same process. We experiment by having another 10 baseball players wear them and run some more drills. And now when we interview them again, we learn that they actually love the new straps, but they feel like the shoe is a little bit too tight. That's something that we didn't even know before. And we keep repeating this process until the product aligns with what it is that customers are looking for. And now when we do our mass production, we actually have data that proves that we're building something that people really want. Never assume that you know something in business. Test, and then test it some more. So now you've got the right product and you've proven that it's ideal for the market. You built a cool product, so now everybody's gonna support you, right? I mean, that's what we've always heard, that if you build it, they'll come. So it must be true. Well, unfortunately, it's not. Actually, if you build it and do nothing else, then nothing will happen. At least nothing good anyway, because nobody will know your product exists, nobody will buy from you, and eventually your business will fail. Remember before the iPhone, when iPods were popular? If you were born in or before the 90s, I bet that you remember it because the iPod was marketed like crazy. You couldn't turn on your TV or your computer without hearing about how awesome the iPod was. But do you remember the Microsoft Zune? Still trying to remember? I'll wait. Don't worry, you probably don't remember it, and honestly, you wouldn't be alone. Functionality-wise, it had pretty much everything the iPad had, maybe even more. But Apple killed them in marketing, and because of that, you've probably never even heard of it. And if you did, I guarantee that you forgot about it until I just mentioned it. The truth is, you have to have a plan for introducing your product to the market, for convincing customers of its benefits, and persuading them to buy from you over your competitors. There are so many marketing channels available, from social media and search engines to radio, television, and magazines. And in fact, there are so many channels that entrepreneurs can often get overwhelmed when they start trying to market their products. The trick is you have to find exactly where your audience exists and then choose the marketing channels that will reach them in the places that they're already engaging. If you're selling software that attracts online business owners, then you're probably not gonna wanna launch a TV commercial. But maybe you do a keyword analysis and realize that 100,000 people are searching for your type of product on Google every month. So you launch a Google Ads campaign targeting those specific keywords. Or maybe you're selling those baseball cleats that we talked about, and you realize that there's a huge baseball community on Instagram. So you hire some influencers there to showcase your product. Ultimately, marketing is a science. When you create products that the audience actually wants and you introduce it to them in the places that they're already engaging, well, that's where you hit the point where you can grow sales and revenue. We've published several videos about marketing different types of businesses, and I'll leave a few links down in the description so you can become more familiar with leveraging different channels to get more attention to your business and to your products. But unfortunately, even if you have the right product and the right marketing strategy today, that doesn't mean that your formula will work forever. Flexible businesses are the ones that win, while those that fail to evolve only last for a short time. Back in 2008, the CEO of Blockbuster said, "Neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition." And at that time, Blockbuster had 9,000 stores across the country and was raking in the dough renting out videos and games through its brick and mortar locations. DVD on demand was sort of catching on, but Blockbuster didn't think it was even a threat. Now let's fast forward to today. Netflix is a multi-billion-dollar company, and there are still thousands of Redbox locations at Kroger's and Walgreens stores across America. But you know what there's not? Well, there's not even a single Blockbuster anywhere in the country. Okay, before somebody calls me out in the comments, I'll take that back, because actually there's one left in Bend, Oregon, somehow. But the other 8,999 locations that they once had, well, none of those exist anymore. Blockbuster had all the money, all the customers, and everything they needed to launch a similar service and bury Netflix and Redbox. They probably could have even saved themselves the time and effort and just acquired both companies. But instead, they were too rigid and too unwilling to change. And when the market shifted, well, they were left behind. I said this before, but it's important that I reiterate it. The market dictates the market. You don't. All that you have control over is your product. If your business isn't flexible, then some innovative entrepreneur that may seem like just a little speck of dust on your radar today is gonna make you dig your own corporate grave and then bury you in it. Let's talk about my fifth piece of advice, and that is, no matter what market you serve, no matter what product you've created, how different you think you are, competition still exists. And that one competitor that you failed to realize exists is probably the one that's gonna give you the most trouble in the end. You might very well be the first business to solve the problem in the way that you solve it, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other solutions that customers are already using. For example, Carl Benz created the first automobile, meaning that at the time he didn't have to compete against Ford, General Motors, Jaguar, BMW, or any other brands. But he still had competition, like horse buggies, bikes, and all the other modes of transportation that people were using every day to get around at the time. And just like Carl Benz, you have competitors too, and they're trying their best to knock you off your square or to get the one over on you so that they can convince customers to give them money that could be yours. Ultimately, you need to know your competitors just like you know about your own business. You need to know what their value propositions are, how they're reaching their customers, what customers like about them, and what they don't like about them. When you know their strengths and their weaknesses, then that's when you can really figure out how to beat them. If you follow these tips, it won't guarantee you success, but it will definitely help you create a business that has the potential to succeed. That is, if you can keep from making one of the many mistakes that commonly kill businesses. And if you don't know what those mistakes are, we have an awesome video right here that will walk you through each one of them and tell you exactly how to avoid them. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and keep creating amazing